Hi AirGigs friends, my name is Mella and I wanted to give you a quick little tutorial about how to imitate voices for clients, and if you are a client, how to guide your session singer to give you the right impression. So obviously if you're pitching a song to an artist, you want that song to sound as close to the artist as possible. Now everybody's unique, we all have different voices, different timbres, different styles, but you can do imitations, you just have to follow a few guidelines. The first thing that both sides should do right away is clarify whether an impression is even needed. I've done this before where I've done the whole song in my voice and I submit it and then the client's like, oh, I wanted an Amy Winehouse style. Well, now I have to redo the whole thing. So make sure you say that up front. If you're the client, if you're the session singer, it never hurts to just ask and clarify. Make sure that they're not looking for something specific. If you're a client and you've just found somebody's profile and they have that artist as a reference that they can imitate, that's fine, but make sure that they know that that's what they need to do. Most of us will assume, unless otherwise stated, that you want just our natural voice. So if you don't, make sure you let us know up front. So let's say that up front the client has asked for an Amy Winehouse style vocal. The first thing you want to do is listen to her songs. You might have heard her songs a million times. Doesn't matter, you're gonna need to go back and find any song and just listen. And what you're listening for is the accent. Obviously, Amy Winehouse had an accent. Most people do, whether or not they realize it. I have a super annoying Midwestern accent. So you just want to focus on how they say their vowels, if they have any specific or signature way they say a certain phrase or word. Those are going to be things that you're going to want to remember. You'll want to research the artist, see if they used any specific recording techniques. Different artists use different styles, such as how they place their microphone, where they like to stand in the room. Not every artist will have that information available, but some do, and you can use that to help you get that sound. In addition to accent, you'll want to pay attention to the timbre of their voice. Amy Winehouse has a very, I would liken her voice almost to the sound of a clarinet. She's got a very round kind of a sound in the back of her throat. Now this might only make sense to me. It really only needs to make sense to me. You just need to find a way to visualize their voice in a way that makes sense to you so that you can recreate it. Placement is huge. You'll definitely want to pay attention to where the artist places their voice. For example, Amy Winehouse and Dolly Parton, right? They couldn't sound more different, and a lot of it has to do with placement. Amy Winehouse keeps hers back here, like they try to make me go to rehab. It's a lot in her, below her nose and in the back of her throat, like here. Whereas Dolly Parton keeps hers pretty high up and towards the middle of her head. They both have vibrato, but very, very different. Dolly uses a ton and Amy Winehouse doesn't use that much. So those are all things you'll need to kind of pay attention to. So you've done your research, you're performing the song. I highly recommend keeping a reference song on hand. If you need to, just play it back. Listen to it between every take, between every line, just to make sure you're still keeping that vibe. Because it's easy to lose it along the way. You know, you might start out in the beginning sounding just like them, and then toward the middle you sound like yourself. So you want to keep that fresh in your mind. Another tip is, if you're really not sure if it's the vibe you want, just do like the intro and maybe the first chorus, send it to the client and get feedback. Make sure that it's what you want. A quick run through, or only up to like 30 seconds, then you can make modifications and go from there. Before delivering your final product, if that's your raw vocals, you'll just want to review them, go through and see if there's any lines that you're like, no, that doesn't sound right. Go back and make changes and then send it over. The review process is different depending on the session singer. We all kind of have our different processes and how many revisions we allow and how we prefer to work. So do it however works best for you, but these are just some tips that will help you along the way toward getting the sound that the client wants. If you've never done this before, I recommend just picking a couple of artists that have a very distinct sound. And I just named a couple, but you can pick any. Like if you're a guy, Axl Rose, Sam Smith, Tom Waits, pick people that sound very distinct and listen and study what makes them sound distinct and how would you recreate that sound. I also highly recommend recording yourself imitating them, because a lot of times you sound more like them in your head than you do in real life. And recording it will give you the opportunity to really hone in and refine your impersonation so that it becomes better over time. But again, the main things you'll want to study when you're studying an artist is their accent, their placement, and their timbre, the overall sound of their voice. When you're singing along with the radio, don't be afraid to try to sound more like the artist and less like yourself. It's just a good practice while you're going along. But I do highly recommend recording yourself, because if you tell a client you can sound like somebody, you want to make sure you actually can before you deliver something. Some artists have unhealthy habits, and you might find that you're risking a vocal injury by imitating some artists. I'm not going to name names, but you know what I mean. There are some artists that don't use proper technique, and if you try to sound like them, you might have to force yourself into using improper technique. If that is the case, I highly recommend either referring the client elsewhere or minimizing the damage that you're doing, because you don't want to risk injury for one project, you know. Unfortunately, there aren't many ways to duplicate poor technique without using poor technique yourself. So that is just something to watch out for, and be sure that you're not forcing yourself into an injury. We'll take Britney Spears as an example. I'm not saying that she doesn't use correct technique, but she's got that, you know, that vocal fry type of thing. So I can do this by placing it in the top of my head, so I'm not actually doing anything to my throat here. So you're going to want to make sure that you can imitate somebody in a healthy way. If you're finding that, you know, you're imitating her and it's going down here, that's bad. And then you don't want to keep doing that through a whole song. You will be hoarse. So make sure that you're working with a coach to adapt your technique so that it works for you and so that you don't have any lasting impact on your voice. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you so much. You can feel free to contact me if I might be a good fit for your project. I have a ton of reels and I do imitate artists. If you need that, please let me know up front. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Bye.